Welcome to Please Excuse My OCD. My name is Tyler Falcoa, and I am here to chew your ear off. This week, it is the week of love. Wow. We have Valentine's Day coming up, and I thought it would be appropriate to do a segment on how to help your partner who is struggling with OCD. I went to the International OCD Foundation website and also the No OCD website. Basically went through both of their lists for this episode, and I picked my top 5 that I felt would have been extremely important for me in a relationship. So, without further ado, here's 5 ways you can help your partner who struggles with OCD. Disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. I am simply someone who has struggled with OCD for most of his life, if not all of it. And I am here to share my experience with you. As always, if you are struggling, please seek advice from a trained professional. The season of love. Love it. So while you're out there getting flowers and chocolate, watching movies, and feeling each other up, here's a little bit of education for you. I just want to clear the air on 2 definitions. Obsessions. Obsessions are unwanted thoughts, images, or urges that trigger intensely distressing feelings. Compulsions are behaviors that an individual engages in to attempt to get rid of the thoughts or uncomfortable feelings. I just wanted to clear the air on that in case, as I'm going through these, you are wondering what an obsession is clarified as or a compulsion. If you're listening to this episode, you've probably heard me talk about obsessions and compulsions before, but I just wanted to make sure we got clear on what those are. The first tip that I have for you on how to help your partner cope with OCD is to help yourself understand OCD. When we say understand OCD, we talk about educating yourself. Learn about exposure response prevention. What that is, ERP is what they call it for short, is it helps the sufferer engage on being exposed to whatever they're obsessing about or whatever's causing them anxiety. And they try to rewire the brain to respond differently by exposing them to the threat. Obviously, not to hurt the person. There should be no danger involved here. But when they are exposed to their fears, they are then helped to resist the compulsions. I've never actually done exposure response prevention with a trained professional, and I wish that I had done that. It would have given me so much more, I think, grace for myself. It would have given me so much more grace doing it with someone who actually was trained in ERP therapy. I 1,000,000% never recommend doing that on your own. I had done that on my own. I was exposing myself to things that scared me, things that were phobias of mine, in trying to diminish the fear by exposing myself repeatedly. And that caused an insane amount of anxiety, panic attacks, worse compulsions in the beginning. And I do not recommend exposing yourself without actually working with a licensed professional. So I have never actually done ERP with a trained professional. I've done cognitive behavioral therapy for most of my life with multiple OCD therapists. So I feel like I can't speak too much on ERP because I've never actually done it with someone who's professional. If you are trying to understand your partner, it might be a good idea to look into ERP and try to understand why it's so effective and why it is necessary to be a treatment plan for someone who has OCD. If you're also looking to understand OCD, it's a good idea to understand the misconceptions that surround OCD. And right now in society, when people talk about OCD, they are usually talking about OCD in terms of cleanliness and organization, which that is almost like a tree branch off of OCD, but it is not OCD. We talked about this earlier. OCD is the obsessions and the compulsions that come out of those obsessions, or in response to those obsessions. A few misconceptions for OCD that are out there would be OCD is just about being neat. OCD can just be stopped if you relax. OCD is a product of bad parenting. Reassurance can help. All four of those are false. They are completely false. And there is a stigma around OCD because there isn't that proactive seeking to understand OCD unless it directly affects you or someone you love. So I think if you can educate yourself on OCD, learning about the different therapies that are out there for OCD, like ERP and CBT, while also looking into the misconceptions that surround OCD and how it is so inappropriately used in our language, can help you better understand your partner and what your partner struggles with on a daily basis. For me, I feel like if I knew these things when I was younger, if I understood myself better as somebody with OCD, I think that I would have been able to navigate certain things better. I'm now 29 years old. I know myself right now and who I am, and I know and understand my OCD. I understand the mechanics of how it works, and I can also now communicate to, a romantic partner what I need when I'm going through an OCD episode. I didn't understand these types of things 10 years ago. I didn't understand these things in college. I feel like it really is an important thing when you are struggling with something, how to communicate that with your partner. Number 2, recognize small achievements. I was listening, so I'm a huge fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger's podcast, The Pump Club. He puts like 5 to 7 minute episodes out multiple times a week. He had an episode the other day that talked about small wins and celebrating the small wins. And this can apply to OCD heavily. This can apply to pretty much anything in life, but OCD specifically in the context that I'm talking about, it is so hard for somebody with OCD to not seek reassurance, because asking for reassurance on something that is bothering them is a compulsion, because no matter how many times you may get reassurance as a sufferer, it's never going to be enough. You're going to continue to seek that reassurance when you're uncomfortable again. For example, a way to recognize a small improvement or achievement would be somebody who's trying to cut down on their compulsions. One of their compulsions is asking their partner, hey, you don't think I'm going to get sick tonight, do you? You don't think that, X, Y, and Z is going to happen? They may continue to ask until they feel like it's rid of their system for the moment. And so if they try to, let's say, cut down their number of times of asking from 5 to 3 and resisting the urge to ask those extra 2 times, that is a huge deal for somebody with OCD, because it's so hard to shut that part of the brain down or calm that part of the brain. Instead of saying, they still keep asking me the same questions and they keep ruminating and going over and over again, maybe look at it and say, well, they're slowly trying to cut down on how many times they ask. And they did. They're slowly cutting down from 5 to 3. Let's recognize that and celebrate that, because that is a huge step for somebody with OCD. It truly is. Something that recognizing small achievements can do is it helps us move forward. You actually teach your brain that it's not this one long jump that you have to do. It's actually a bunch of little jumps. And if you can get each little jump as you go along and you can recognize the jump you just did, it becomes more of a process for you rather than a destination. And I think that is very important when you have someone who you love as a partner struggling with OCD. It's so important for them to know that it is a step-by-step thing, and recognizing the small step-by-step achievements that they are hitting is so monumental for them and for their brain. Another compulsion that they may try to stop doing is like washing their hands as much. If you say to them, well, you're still washing your hands, like you're not making progress here, it's not going to do anything actually for the sufferer. It's going to make them just feel worse about it. If you can recognize, I noticed that you stopped yourself once, I noticed that you did it one time less than you would have. And that's something to be proud of. So recognizing small achievements is a big thing for us. Number 3, this one I feel like is massive. And there's a reason why I included it here, because I was guilty of not knowing this when I was going through my OCD. And had I known this, I think that my relationships would have been a little bit easier to deal with on both of our parts. This one is avoid providing reassurance to your partner. This is so hard because when you see your partner struggling, all you want to do is fix and help the pain and struggle and anxiety go away. Naturally, you think when they come to you and ask for reassurance about something, you want to give them that reassurance because it calms the anxiety. However, it actually is worse because you keep them in the loop, because you're actually teaching the brain that the brain only feels safe when it gets that reassurance. So when the brain doesn't get that reassurance, initially it's going to feel terrifying and it sucks and it's scary for the person suffering, but it's actually imperative to help break the OCD cycle and loop of thought, compulsion of asking for reassurance, back again, relieved anxiety, thought again, asking for reassurance, relief, thought. So it just continues the cycle. If you continue to give your partner reassurance, it's not going to ever be enough for the OCD brain. It's never enough. You really want to avoid personal criticism when this happens. So if a partner comes to you and they're having thoughts about being a bad person and feeling guilty about something they did when they were 10 years old, and they say, am I a bad person? Do you think this? Do you think that? And of course, you're going to want to say, no, you're not. Of course not. But they're going to ask you that 10 minutes later. It's best for you to say something like, well, I'm not sure. What do you think? Or, sorry, I can't answer that for you. We could also go with, we agreed that I shouldn't answer this for you. The brain needs to sit with that discomfort. The brain needs to sit with that, oh no, I don't have my answer. Oh no, I don't have what I need. What's happening? What's going to happen? You can't give them that immediate relief because that's going to continue the cycle. You want to speak with a calm tone. You don't want to yell because yelling isn't going to do anything. I mean, think about it. Like when you were a kid and you were growing up and someone yelled at you, one, it probably gave you fear. It probably gave you shame. It probably made you feel inferior, right? How is that going to help someone who's already afraid of everything? Like it's not going to do any good, as annoyed as you may feel. Another part to this is encouraging your partner to talk about their thoughts and feelings without actually getting involved in them. And this is a huge part in listening. This is not something that I learned until I was in my 20s, was how to listen, because we're so infatuated with listening, but then responding. Are you truly listening to anybody in your life when you have an answer for everything they come to you with? If you can encourage your partner who's struggling with OCD to talk to you about their thoughts and feelings and be a safe place for them to let that out without judging them, that's also teaching the brain that there doesn't need to be judgment to every thought. There doesn't need to be that attached judgment to a negative thought that you have where you're like, oh no, am I a bad person? Or, oh no, like I just thought about this. What does that mean? When you are around people and you have more of that listening act happening without judgment, you're presenting your brain with an example and really a little bit of an education on what it means to watch these thoughts and listen to the thoughts that come through without actually engaging with them. So if you can avoid providing reassurance to your partner who is struggling with OCD, as hard as it may be, you're helping contribute to stopping the cycle. Number 4, set limits. What this means is it kind of gives a little box of, okay, what are we doing and how are we learning to cope with this? If you can come to an agreement with your partner in how you help them with their compulsions, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the last one, which is if they come to you and they are on this road to recovery and they say, hey, every time I come to you with these kind of thoughts, make sure you don't reassure me. Like, I know I'm going to be super uncomfortable. I know that like I'm going to continue asking, but we need to stick to that. Have these agreements set in place where you can help your partner face these obsessions without completely reassuring them. If they're afraid to go out and eat and get, sick, and, every single time they touch something, they have to use hand sanitizer, maybe agree not to use the hand sanitizer so much before you eat. It's about helping to see what your partner's triggers are, what they obsess over, what their compulsions are, and how you can be a part of almost their healing and their process to work through OCD. So coming up with agreements as a team as to how your partner can help you while you're trying to deal with your obsessions and your compulsions. Set limits on how much time is contributed to discussing OCD. We know or understand a lot of things in regards to OCD, and when you're in the beginning of understanding yourself and your journey through OCD, it can also be a compulsion to continue to learn and recognize and read up on OCD as you're going through it. You want to make sure every single thought you're having is part of OCD, or making sure that every little thing that's happening in your life is part of OCD. Maybe there's a time frame that we have. Maybe we don't spend 4 hours on Google researching OCD when we're having a bad attack, and we want to continue to reassure ourselves that it's OCD and not something else. It's kind of like, time blocking with ADHD. I have pretty severe ADHD, and time blocking my day, setting limits on things that I know that I could go overboard on, and making sure that I have enough time throughout the day to take care of myself and do everything that I need to do, using alarms and calendars and things like that. It's kind of like that with OCD and researching. So it's not going to be of benefit to you if you're having a compulsion of researching health things all day and being like, oh, I'm going to stop researching tomorrow. It's no, step by step, one little jump at a time, one little hop at a time, really. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. An important part of this is you don't want to discuss these limitations in the middle of a panic attack or someone who's having a challenging OCD day. It's probably best to talk about these things when your partner's in a clear mood, in a clear-headed space, or at least a less anxious state, so that you can agree clearly on what the limits are and how you can help. My last tip is to maintain the relationship health. What I mean by that is, if you let OCD take a step, it will take a mile. If there's a way that you can continue to do activities together as a couple, even when things are a bit challenging. I didn't really experience this in my recent relationship, but I can say from experience when I was younger and in college and really going through it, even at the height of everything, I would still force myself to do things with the family. As hard as it was, I had plenty of panic attacks. There was something comforting in knowing that I didn't stay behind and I didn't back down, even when I felt like the world around me was crumbling. Yeah, I didn't get to enjoy the activities as much as I would have if I was good, but that was teaching my brain and teaching the OCD part of my brain that I wasn't stopping, and I wasn't going to stop continuing to have the relationships in my life because they were important to me. And as scared as I was, I didn't want to be crippled. I did not want to be crippled by OCD. There were times where I felt like I was. Those were hard times. Continue to nurture your relationship physically, spiritually, whatever it is that you feel connects you. Do not let OCD dictate the kind of relationship you have, because it can be so easy to fall into stopping your whole life. It can be so easy to not spend time with your partner. It can be so easy to really just let everything in your brain that you're dealing with take over. And you don't spend that time talking to your partner about what's going on. You don't spend time talking to your partner about their day. Your partner's not your doctor. Your partner's not your psychiatrist. Your partner is your partner, and they're supposed to be with you through the ups and the downs of the OCD journey. This goes for both the person who is struggling with OCD and the person who has a partner who's struggling. Is recognize that OCD does not have to be the relationship. It doesn't have to be the focal point. Being able to stay aware and recognize that you don't have to let OCD take over the relationship, but as long as you can stay aware and be open with each other in your communication, that's going to be a huge stepping stone in navigating the OCD journey. Be a part of your partner's therapy if they would like that. It's one thing to ask and they say, that's something I'd rather do, in private. It's another thing to not ask at all. I am at a point in my life where I know myself, I know my OCD, I understand it with the help of therapy and medication and the support of my family. I do not need to go to therapy with a partner, but had this been 10 years ago and I was turning 20 and trying to navigate all this out and I had a partner, I like to think that I would have been comfortable with them coming to therapy with me. I know at the time I was going to therapy and bringing my mom with me because I just wanted to have a support system of somebody that I loved and that I knew was familiar and was dealing with these things with me, to be there. She came for a bit and it was a huge part of my healing because I feel like I was able to have that bridge between my comfort and then talking to someone who was objective and really not involved in my personal life. So I was able to bridge that gap and it helped my process go much smoother than it could have been. This one's huge. This one is maintaining your own well-being. If you don't show up for yourself, how can you show up for your partner who's struggling? If you don't know what you need to take care of yourself and your health, how can you be there for your partner who's struggling with their health? Do not let your partner's struggle stop you from taking care of yourself either, because you need to take care of yourself in order to help your partner, in order to be there, to be present mentally, emotionally, physically. If both of you are down and out, it's going to be really hard to navigate. Take care of yourself as a partner so that you can be there for your partner who's struggling. I came into this with the intention of talking to people who are dating or are married to someone with OCD, but this really can be for anybody. And it also can be for any type of relationship you have in your life. But I think this was appropriate for the fact that Valentine's Day is this week. If we put as much effort into chocolates and flowers and all the material crap that comes around this holiday, and putting that effort into the mental and emotional side of our relationships, I feel like we would be able to understand each other a little bit better. Now, moving on to everyone's favorite parts of the podcast, which is the Q&A. This first one came from ERP and me. Now, this is Sean. He started a page on Instagram that documents his journey through exposure response prevention. And you got to see this guy because he is really out there on the battlefield and doing it in front of the world. It's really something. And he's actually somebody that I would love to have on the podcast. So you'll probably be hearing from him soon. His question was, is your goal to be subclinical or OCD free? So for anybody who doesn't know what subclinical means, it is the presence of obsessions and or compulsions without actually impairing you or impeding on your quality of life. So I actually am in subclinical OCD. So I'll never be OCD free because this is literally how my brain works. It's been like this all my life. I don't ever remember a day where I didn't have some sort of intrusive thought or obsessions or compulsions, but I've just accepted that it's just part of how my brain works, and I'll never not have that part of my brain. It's part of my daily life, but it does not stop me from living my life. I am able to do things that I was afraid of doing years ago. I'm able to have really successful, healthy relationships in all areas of my life because I understand how my brain works, what I need, my triggers. I understand a lot of these things, and I feel like to, hope that I'll be OCD free in my life, I just don't. It's not something that I've ever known. So even like the first episode, I talked about my first intrusive thought that I can remember, and I must have been 6 years old. I don't really remember not having that type of anxiety, and I don't remember not having obsessions and not having compulsions. And it wasn't until later on in my life where I realized the things that were considered compulsions, like even just ruminating on things, seeking reassurance, Googling things. It's not just the physical things of tapping on the desk 5 times. These are things that I learned later. And I recognize that I've been doing these things my whole entire life. Like even, in 4th grade, before my mom used to drop me off at school, I used to ask her a list of the same 10 questions every morning. And she didn't know that she shouldn't reassure me, but she would reassure me through every question, the same question every single day before school. I'd be like, Mom, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? I would go through the whole list. She didn't know that was a compulsion, and I didn't either. So I've accepted that it's just part of how my brain works. I don't do that anymore. There's a lot of compulsions and obsessions that I've had throughout my life that I do not do and have anymore. The way I walk and not step on cracks is a habit now. It's not causing me a panic attack anymore when I step on a crack thinking my whole family's going to die. Like that, it doesn't affect me anymore, but I still skip cracks just because it's just how my brain works. I just don't step on cracks. Like a lot of the way I live my life is just out of habit because of how my brain works and how my brain has coped with a lot of these things throughout my life. So I am subclinical OCD, and I am at a place where I can travel and I can have healthy relationships and I can do the things that once scared me because I've been working on these things for most of my life. I'll always have that OCD brain. And if I can stay in subclinical OCD, I'm good. This next question comes from Paige, and the question is, do you ever hear others' experiences with OCD and panic thinking you don't have it? It's another way of doubt, right? So OCD has a really good way of making you doubt things, and that can include the doubt of having OCD. And I used to have that in college during that time when I was having intrusive thoughts, I would be like, oh, maybe this isn't OCD. And then I would get really anxious and have a panic attack because I'd be thinking it's schizophrenia instead. And, I don't have schizophrenia. Nobody in my family has it. So my OCD was, making me doubt the fact that I even had it. And that can be really distressing for somebody with OCD because they can go down that rabbit hole of, oh, what if it's this, or what if it's that, and what if it's not actually OCD, or you kind of go down this road and that is a symptom of OCD. So it is OCD. I had dealt with that in college. I don't deal with that now. It's been quite a bit, but this is why I feel like I'm able to sit on here and talk to you guys about OCD this openly and talk about my triggers and talk about these things because I understand it so well in myself that if you can get something out of this and it's providing you some value and it can help you understand yourself a little bit better, then I'm happy. And that's what this is for. That is a wrap for this Valentine's Day episode. Those are my 5 top tips, 5 ways to help your partner who struggles with OCD. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to shop merch, it's on the website, pleaseexcusemyocd.com. If you want to submit a question for me to answer on next week's episode, you can find that on my website. Ask me a question. It's there. Click on that tab. You can be anonymous if you'd like, or you can just use your first name, whatever you're comfortable with, and I will do my due diligence and answer those questions for you. You can find me on all social media. Please excuse my OCD, whether that's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate every single person who comes on here and listens to what I have to say about OCD. It makes me feel supported in this community. It gives me hope that other people will not have to struggle in ignorance the way I did. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you next week.